Who else do we have out there? We've got excellent Jordan, Brazil, China. We've got quite a lot of people for this webinar, which is really nice, and I think it tells us something about the exhibition, that we need to know more about it, that we need to discuss it a little bit more. I'm going to give you my take on it today, and I hope I can offer you something that's new. We've got someone from Bangkok. Excellent. I think we'll make a start. It's 11 o'clock. So welcome to this latest webinar from a very, very sunny and beautiful Cambridge. It's looking really, really nice today. It's freezing cold, but it's beautiful out there. Welcome to everyone. A lot of people for this webinar. We've got about 50 people joining, but I've had about 500 people sign up for this, which is pretty big. So it's clearly a topic that we need to discuss and we need to understand. And you know, I hope to learn as much from you as hopefully you'll get from me. So I'll talk a little bit later about, you know, how to get this dialogue going. Okay, so today's webinar is about two things. But I think that they cannot really be separated. Okay, we're looking at the themes, that is to say the core and the optional themes, particularly the optional themes, and the TOK exhibition. So I'm going to start just by explaining why we have the learning objective that we do. Let me just take you back to the first slide. So the learning objective today is I can explain the nature of the TOK themes and relate this to the key aspects of the exhibition task, which is a little bit of a mouthful. That probably not one that I would give to students because I think it needs clarifying, but I'll try to clarify it to start off with. I think we need to shift our paradigms. I always think we need to shift our paradigms as teachers, as learners. We should always be acceptant of new ideas. We should always be willing to change. This is one of the great things about the IB diploma, that it sort of updates every 7 years, and we have to adapt to a new way of doing things. But I think we need to think big in terms of the way we shift our paradigms and the way we look at education. So I'll explain what I mean by that. Then I'd just like to go over what I think the nature of the themes, the TOK themes, the core and the optional themes is, and maybe get something back from you. And the way we understand that will feed into how we deliver the exhibition and how we run the TOK course. So it's obviously crucial to get it. I think they need to be treated in a different way to the areas of knowledge. They play a different role, and I'll offer my interpretation. I'd like then to think about what the exhibition is, what the aims of the exhibition are, and what more than the aims, the aspirations. You know, again, let's think big. What part does this play in the overall education of our students? Right, then, excuse me, I'm going to summarize the key points that we've already looked at in those first few slides, because I want to sort of rethink certain ideas that hopefully I've planted. And that's going to lead us on to what we then do with those ideas, how we then approach the exhibition. Okay, this is quite ambitious. I hope you're going to follow this. I've got so many thoughts about the exhibition, so many thoughts about the new syllabus, and I think I've managed to sort of pull it all together. But you know, you can give me your feedback on that, whether you think I have or I haven't, at the end of the presentation. Then I'd like to offer a couple of pathways for the exhibition. To some degree, these are a little contrived because I think, you know, providing a step-by-step guide to something as big as the exhibition or the TOK essay it could become a sort of straitjacket. Okay, obviously, we create these things in a lot of different ways. We you know, the step-by-step guide approach, you know, can happen in any order. In reality, we do things, you know, in more of a kind of overlapping, messy, chaotic way. But I'll show you, I think, two model pathways that may provide some sort of help, at least in using the resources that we produce and the website in order to create the presentation. Then I'd like to share a couple of slides on the support that we provide on the site. Some of you will be members of theoryofknowledge.net, some of you won't. There's plenty of free stuff for people. If you don't want to be a member, that's fine. But there's a lot of support on the site for members, a lot built into lessons, a lot built into other resources that I've relatively recently added to the site. So I'd like to just quickly go over that and just highlight the newest thing that we're doing at the moment, which you may well have seen, the little explainer videos, the animated explainer videos that I've been adding. And that's it. This should hopefully last an hour. I do have a tendency to overrun slightly, and if we get lots of questions, that will be great. But we'll see how we go this morning. Okay, so yeah, duration of the webinar, about an hour. If you don't know me, my name is Michael Dunn. I'm the creator of theoryofknowledge.net, which is a fairly large website these days, used by a lot of schools around the world for delivering the course. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end if you want to hang around for that. So questions and contributions. Yeah, I want questions. I want feedback. I want your comments. You know, I am trying to encourage sort of learning community. I know there's a lot of that going on. Excuse me, you've probably seen on Facebook there's some really useful TOK teacher groups that I occasionally look at. I'm more active on LinkedIn. I post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. So, you know, it's easy to get the dialogue going. It's easy to give me feedback. You can do that directly now by using the chat at the end of the presentation, or you can email me, or we can sort of add things on social media. And after this is finished, I'll create a sort of debrief email and send it out to everyone that has registered for the webinar. Okay, so if you have any questions, if you have any comments, I'd love to add them and respond to them in that debrief that I'll send. I'll also have a link, obviously, to the recording of this event and the presentation that you're looking at right now. Okay, so yeah, this is a little ambitious, but I think it has to be ambitious. I think when we look at the themes, when we look at the exhibition, we have to sort of consider them alongside each other because they sort of fit together. But here's a sort of caveat to that. If you saw the very useful IB presentation in the webinar last week on the exhibition, which I highly recommend, it clarifies certain things. It doesn't really give you anything new, but it clarifies certain things, I thought, in a really good way, which I will kind of try to consolidate and emphasize during this presentation. And also, if you have seen, well, I'm not going to say it yet, but what am I trying to say? I think you can overstate the importance of the themes when it comes to the exhibition. They fit intimately together, but there's a big caveat to that, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. But basically, understanding the nature of the exhibition, understanding what the exhibition is, will inform the way that you build the themes into your course. And you know, this is kind of circular arrangement here. Understanding the themes will help you to plan for and carry out the exhibition. Okay. All right, that's all I'll say right now. This is complicated. I'll clarify what I mean about that in a second. Okay, so hopefully to summarize that, I think you have to take them together in order to understand both parts. Okay, you can't just look at the exhibition on its own without considering the themes, and likewise, you can't just consider the themes without considering the exhibition. Okay, all right, more on that in a second. Okay, so first of all, let's sort of think big here. Mr. Gradgrind, I'm sure you've come across, the Charles Dickens character from Hard Times. I'm a big Dickens fan. You know, 150 years ago, Charles Dickens was already critical of an education system that is still in place, basically. We are, as educators, because we have exams foisted upon us, which are kind of kept in place by, I guess, universities. Well, this is another subject for another rant at some point. Basically, we are still used to following the Mr. Gradgrind approach to teaching and learning, okay, which basically consists of teaching new subject content to students, which they memorize, and then they sit an exam. Okay, now as teachers, particularly as TOK teachers, I think we try and rebel against that. We try and make that more interesting. We have systems that come along to try and make it more innovative, more engaging, more meaningful. You have fantastic educationalists like the dear departed Ken Robinson, who just rail against this 19th century, not even 20th century, 19th century way of thinking and educating and bringing up our children. Happily, as TOK educators, we can be different. We can afford to be different, and I think we are different. Okay, but I think we shift our paradigm, but a lot of us only shift it by 50%. Okay, so we have shifted from the idea that this content gets examined, which is great, and we embrace, or we try to embrace the other types of assessment in TOK, i.e. the essay, formerly the presentation, and now the exhibition. So we're slightly different to other teachers. Maybe we're the sort of special forces of teachers that have our own rules. We don't have an exam, which I personally love. I always hated exams as a child, and I think we should think about what worked for us as children, as students. And exams certainly never worked for me. It just alienated me, and I see that happening in the vast majority of the students that I teach. I don't think you should get rid of exams completely. I think they give some sort of power to the students. They are marks generated outside of the control of their teachers, but I think ultimately they're not a meaningful way of assessing human potential. Again, I'm ranting. Another time. Now, I think as TOK educators, we need to go further. Okay, we need to shift our paradigm 100% and not just 50%. So, what do I mean by that? I think we need to get away. Sorry, I skipped a slide. I think that we need to get away from the idea that we have a certain set amount of content that we have to get through before they are assessed via the essay and via the exhibition. I think we should be a lot more creative, a lot more, I don't know, I hate the expression blue sky thinking, but I think the content, we shouldn't feel obliged to cover certain types of content in a certain type of way. I think we should play with it. I think we should be creative. I think we should create an extraordinary experience for our students. That should be the driving force. Okay. So I want to suggest today that there are three principles that can inform the way we shift our paradigm. And these have a direct relationship on how we approach the themes in the exhibition. Okay, and this is partly based on the IB themselves, which I'll emphasize in a second. It's partly based on that fantastic webinar that was delivered last week. So this is not me making stuff up. I mean, I know I'm a very idealistic, sort of utopian educationalist, but this is also very firmly based on what the IB want and what the TOK course should direct us into doing. Okay, so number one. TOK is not about teaching students new facts, new content, new stuff. It's about putting into perspective what they already know. There's something sort of platonic about that. It's rethinking what the ideas that they might already have. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't be giving them new ideas and new thinkers, but those new ideas and new thinkers should allow them to sort of recalibrate what they already think they know. It should give them a new way of articulating the ideas that they might already know. We should be testing their assumptions. We should be testing their ideas. We should be giving them the tools to do that. But this is not about giving them, a new sort of set of formulas, a new, periodic table, a new set of dates and things for them to memorize and learn in order to understand the sort of course of history. We are, this is what the IB themselves say, and I love this concept. Rethinking ideas that they already have. So that's point number one. Point number two, this is really important, and this has got to really sink in. because you read this in the TOK guide, and you might hear about this, but I think it's something that a lot of people just sort of dismiss. And I think that's a mistake. It's not necessarily the right thing to do to embrace it either, but it's something that we have to remember. So point number 2, it's not obligatory to set your exhibition commentary within the context of the core or optional themes, okay? Students are not assessed on the links that they make to the themes in their exhibition. Their objects do not have to be based on one of the optional themes or the core theme. Objects can actually be linked to different themes. Okay, so you can have 2 maybe that relate to language and 1 that relates to technology. This is unlike the TOK essay, okay, because you are marked in the TOK essay on your links to TOK. So you've got to base it on the areas of knowledge. That is not the case with the exhibition. Okay. Likewise, we are telling our students, your commentary is 950 words long, okay? A better way of looking at it is it's 3 paragraphs, each one 300 and a bit words long. You are not concluding to the IA prompt, via the optional themes. I think that's enough. Okay, so just let that sink in. Okay, we don't have to link the exhibition to the core or optional themes. That is not mandatory, okay, unlike the TOK essay. All right, I'll come back to that and I'll talk about the implications of that and the significance of that very shortly. Point number 3, this is what I always think of as an educator in general, as a TOK educator in particular. Our course should be about creating a brilliant experience for our students, a brilliant, not just academic experience, but almost sort of metaphysical experience. I want to make them laugh. I want to frustrate them. I want to engage them. I want to empower them. I want this to be one of the most profound experiences that they have in their lives, in school and out of school. I want them to love the course. I want them to absolutely idealize what we're doing, because I think it's incredible what we're doing. So those are 3 principles. Okay, not teaching new content necessarily, not linking the exhibition to the themes. You don't have to. I'm not saying don't do it, but you don't have to. Thirdly, making TOK brilliant. Right, I'm going to come back to that. And I'm gonna build on that and say why I think those 3 things are really important. Okay. All right. So now let's have a quick look at what we mean by the core and the optional themes. And I have delivered a webinar on this before, when I looked sort of overall at TOK 2022. So first of all, I think the optional themes. Let's start with the optional themes. I think they're perhaps easier to grasp. The optional themes. Definitely not bodies of knowledge in the same way that areas of knowledge can be, although the nature of them is flexible, but they're not bodies of knowledge. They are more affiliations. Okay, they are ways in which we can understand our perspectives, our different points of view. Okay, so all of our students have, well, the optional themes form the relationship that our students have with knowledge and understanding and their perception of the world. Okay, all of them speak a language or several languages, which will shape the means in which they acquire knowledge about the world. They will all have political affiliations, or maybe non-political affiliations, but that in itself will shape them. Likewise with the religion. They will all use technology. They will all be affected by the way technology allows them access to the world and the universe. And this is important as well. I think people are having more trouble with indigenous societies, but they will all have some sort of relationship with indigenous knowledge, some of them much closer than others. Some of them might not even realize they have a relationship with indigenous societies, but they all do. And you have to work a little bit harder perhaps with that optional theme, but they all have a relationship with knowledge that comes from indigenous societies. Now the core theme, I mean, the diagram there, which I designed quite a while ago, but I think it works. It still works. The more I understand the course, the more I think, yeah, good, I got that right. It's all interlocking. Okay, so the optional themes in a way sort of allow us to process the areas of knowledge, and the kind of result of that helps to shape us as knowers. Okay, the core theme. So the core theme is more about how we process our knowledge on a personal level. It has a lot of crossovers with the ways of knowing. If you're not new to TOK, if you've taught it before, you'll know what I mean. But intuition, for example, how do we use intuition in understanding the world? Perhaps in some ways it's very helpful, perhaps sometimes it leads us astray. The use of our senses, the extent to which we rely on our senses to acquire knowledge about the world, how we draw on our memory. So I think it has a lot to do with the ways of knowing. But overall, I think we need to see this course very much as interlocking. All parts interlock, all parts have a relationship with each other. And I've seen some quite elaborate diagrams portraying the new course. In fact, I tried to design a much more elaborate one than this. I gave up because it became too complicated. But basically, you can make a link between any of the areas of knowledge to any of the optional themes, to the core theme. They all link. If you sort of imagine a sort of huge nexus kind of diagram, you could portray the course like that, but they all link in some way. Okay, so 3 different elements forming one interlocking whole is how I view the course. All right, so those are the themes. So you'll realize this webinar is quite complicated. Each part I'm treating separately, but then I'm going to try and draw it all together. Okay, so I hope this is flowing. Right, so now let's think about the exhibition. Okay, what are the aims of the exhibition? What is the exhibition? What are its aspirations? Okay, so again, let's embrace it. Let's be excited by it. I think it represents a massive opportunity. Well, TOK, sorry, the TOK course. Let's start with that. Represents a huge opportunity to just have a great time with our students, to introduce them to these extraordinary ideas and thinkers. And the exhibition is our allows us to showcase what we do. Okay, it allows us to show the rest of the learning community. By that I mean other teachers, other students, all the way down to the earliest year groups. Why not? And also the parents. Let's get them on board. It allows us to show them how cool TOK is, how we do such brilliant things in TOK. I'm not exaggerating. I know I get quite excited about TOK, but I'm not exaggerating when I say I think this is the most exciting part of all of their education. Okay, not just in the DP, but their whole education. I think if we do it right, we can get to that point. And I think showing that and being involved in showcasing what TOK is has huge benefits. Empowers the students. There's nothing students like more, even though they sometimes pretend they don't like this, but there's nothing they like more than seeing their kind of work displayed or their ideas mentioned or praised for coming up with a great idea. It's so empowering, and that's what we do as educators. That education equals empowerment for me. Okay, so it empowers our students to be involved in the exhibition, or it can. I know it's all complicated at the moment. It has to be online rather than in school, but I think that's what it does. I think it sort of consolidates the TOK department and TOK in a school. I know it's hard to integrate TOK with the rest of the DP, with the rest of the school. I know a lot of teachers are often reluctant, sometimes for the right reasons, sometimes for the wrong reasons, to get involved in TOK. But I think it helps to sort of establish us as a central part of the school and the educational experience. I was relatively late to the MYP. I taught it in my last school, and seeing the personal projects was one of the greatest things I've experienced as an educator. I think that's such an amazing event, and we can do the same now in TOK. And in fact, one of the suggestions the IB have is that you can merge the two. I don't think you should do that. I think they're better off separate. But it's that kind of event. It's amazing. It's so cool for the students. I think also making the most of the exhibition sort of really brands our schools as hubs of critical thinking, which I think you know, maybe marketing, we can be cynical about marketing, but the fact is, you know, the idea of image feeding into reality, you know, we perceive something to be something, and sometimes it becomes that thing, even if it isn't that thing. It's a bit metaphysical, but you know, I think it's important. We need to broadcast what we're doing. We need to be proud of what we're doing. And I think, you know, having an amazing exhibition day, really paying attention to the exhibition and making the most of it, shows that we are true hubs of genuine critical thinking. And it also gives our students more tangible proof of what they have achieved. Okay. You know, I always say that TOK is a great tool for university application. Universities love TOK. They love the IB diploma in general, but, you know, they love the ability, they love the skills that it instills in students, the autonomous learning, the way in which they produce the essay and the exhibition. You know, I think it's a great thing to talk about in interview at university. This is what I did for my exhibition. This is how I communicated my ideas. This is how I felt when I conversed with people about, you know, what I had done. You know, that's great sort of interview fodder. Okay, choice for me is an integral part of education. I think we should give students as much choice as possible, you know, within a helpful framework that they can work with. I know choice can be scary. You can give too much choice to students sometimes and leave them just feeling lost. But I still think that choice is something we should aspire to as much as possible. And with the exhibition, they have that. They can choose any object. They can choose one of 35 IA prompts. They can choose their context, okay, which I will come to more in a second. And this is what the IB, this is why the IB have come up with the exhibition in the form that it is already in. They wanted to get rid of certain aspects of the presentation, but they wanted to keep that choice and student voice. I think they sort of very catchily put it. So yeah, I think we should embrace that, and I think we should take it as far as we possibly can. Choice is really important. Last point, the exhibition to some degree, I think even more than the essay, represents the point of TOK. Yeah, there's no point just keeping it within a classroom, keeping it too abstract. This is the sort of proof. This is the illustration that TOK is useful to us, relating TOK ideas to the real world, you know, showing how these concepts manifest themselves in that thing outside our windows. It's not about kind of memorized facts and referring to abstract ideas and concepts and, you know, the flow of logic and how you construct that kind of thing in the TOK world. It is about the real world. It is about you know, showing how, you know, literally physical objects are filled with TOK ideas and concepts. Okay, so it's about keeping it real. It's about how it manifests in the real world. Okay, again, I'm going to ask you to try and remember these points that I'm making, because I am going to try and explain the implications of all of them and how this shapes the way we should view the exhibition and the themes. Okay, all right, so here we go. This is what I've said so far. These, I think, are the 6 most important things, and you'll see the ... there because it's leading us to how we should, I think, approach the exhibition. So first of all, I've said that TOK is more about making students think in a new way about what they already know, rather than providing with loads of new content. This is particularly the case with the themes. I think more so than the areas of knowledge, but to some degree it applies to that as well. But we're just thinking about themes today. Secondly, really important point: student exhibitions are not marked on links to the themes. You do not have an obligation to set your exhibition commentary within the context of the core or optional themes. Thirdly, TOK should be about creating a brilliant education experience. Point number 4, themes are an integral part of the TOK course, not kind of separate. I don't think you can separate them. They are an integral part. You have to use the themes in order to understand the areas of knowledge. And that will help us then figure out the sort of core theme. Number 5, the overall aim of the exhibition is to link TOK and its ideas to the real world. And number 6, we should be doing all we can to give students choice. Okay, so those are the salient points that I have covered so far. And ... I'm going to try and link that to how I see the exhibition and how I sort of suggest you should see the exhibition. We all have our own interpretations. You can throw this straight back into my face if you think I've got this completely wrong, but this is what I think it leads us to. Okay, so suggested approaches to the exhibition. So point number 1, I don't think doing 2 optional themes in detail is a good idea. I don't, and I see a lot of chat on social media. Which 2 are you doing? Well, I've got stuck with Indigenous societies and language. I'm doing technology and religion. I don't get that. Okay, because I don't think you can teach TOK without at least referring to all of them. I think they're all going to come up. And I think during discussions, you can't help but ask students, well, do you think your political affiliations might be influencing the way you're thinking? Or do you think the fact that you have this particular religious background shapes the way you make that claim? Do you think that the way in which you've used technology to acquire that idea is entirely reliable? And of course, language, the whole thing is language. How can you not do language? Language has got to be there. Okay, so I think, and this is how I've designed my course, you should at least mention all 5 and embrace all 5, perhaps delve into a little more detail, in 2 or 3 of them. But I think we're constantly going to be talking about all of them. When you do history, for example, think about that, that area of knowledge. How can we talk about history without referring to politics? How can we talk about history without referring to language? So those are 2 that we have to do if we do history. When we do the natural sciences, how can we do that without referring to technology? The use of technology to acquire knowledge about the universe, etc. It's impossible. How can we look at let's say the arts? I'm very interested in sort of Indigenous art, how the way religion has informed the way art has developed over time. It's impossible to not talk about them. So I'm going to do these 2. I don't know. I think that's a questionable way of approaching it. So I think we should mention at least all of them, and we should be open to sort of drawing on them as much as we possibly can. Why do I say that? So I've sort of explained why I think we shouldn't do just 2. Why should we do 5? I think it's really important if we are serious about giving our students choice. Okay, I think it's almost like a taster menu, right? So you have quite a few months, 8 or 9 months, to get through a lot of stuff before they do the exhibitions. That's plenty of time to give them a really good flavor of all 5 optional themes. I think the core theme you have to do, personally, I deal with that first, although I'm constantly referring back to it throughout the course. My big question 1 is really all about the core theme. It mentions all of the different aspects of the course, but it focuses mostly on the core theme, and then we refer back to it. But if you have covered all 5, if you've mentioned all 5, if you've discussed all 5, if they are very clear about what the 5 optional themes are, it gives them much better opportunities when it comes to the exhibition. They can choose any of those 5, rather than forcing them to do, right, we've done language during our course, you have to do language, and we've also done politics, so you have to choose from those 2. I think we should be not just allowing them choice, but supporting them to choose. And I think that will only come by covering all of the optional themes. How do you do that, right? So you might be thinking, okay, well, God, I spend 3 weeks on each optional theme. I'm just not going to have time to do all 5. No way. Well, of course, you wouldn't have time if you treated them separately. And this takes me back to what I've been saying. TOK is an integrated, that circular diagram thing. It all works together. You can't separate one strand and look at it on its own. So I I think you should not teach the themes in isolation. I don't think you should teach anything in isolation, apart from maybe the core theme, starting off with that, kicking off with that, because I think it's a good way of beginning. But even then, you're going to be referring to other parts of the course. But you cannot teach the optional themes in the areas of knowledge separate. I don't think. How can you? This is not how knowledge works. So I strongly suggest that your units are. You don't have to follow what I do. I do mine via 6 big questions, but I think they should be they should be sort of thematic units, question-based units, rather than number 1 history, number 2 language, number 3 whatever it is. And of course, I'm not making this up. If you look in the TOK subject guide, if you look in the teacher's notes, you'll see that the IB themselves recommend, well, they don't recommend you do that, but they offer that as one way of teaching the TOK course. And I think it's a much better way of teaching the TOK course. So I think you should be doing the themes in combination with the areas of knowledge. And you should be constantly sort of relating all this back to their own personal affiliations. Okay, so the core theme to some degree is how they sort of personally make sense of their political, religious, linguistic kind of affiliations. Okay, it all flows into each other. It all interconnects. Okay, I think your units should be aligned, if possible, to the IA prompts, so that let's say you've gotten through in the course that I do, that we try and get through the 5 of the 6 big questions in year 1 before they do the exhibitions, and my students can instantly see, let's say big question number 4 is all about our perspectives and biases. Well, that relates to this IA prompt, this IA prompt, this IA prompt, and this IA prompt. So the units that I have, the question-based units that I have designed, align really, really nicely with the IA prompts. It's another thing that they managed to do for us. And so it means that the students instantly know how the IA prompts relate to what they've been learning about. I think also you should expect the students to carry out a little bit of additional research. I know the exhibition is not a research task, absolutely, but I think they should be expected to do a little bit of reading, a little bit of extra reading, perhaps, on the theme that they have selected. If they're choosing a theme for an IA prompt, they might not, but I think they should be expected to do a little bit of extra research in their own time in order to prepare for the exhibition. What is it, 8 hours recommended teaching time for the exhibition? We should expect them to do a little bit of extra work in preparation outside of that. So those are some really strong suggested approaches to the exhibition. So this takes us to a couple of model pathways for the exhibition, and like I say, this can seem a little bit contrived, coming up with, this is how it's done. I think in reality, it might be a combination of both of these ways. For example, the first pathway on the left-hand side starts with choosing the IA prompts. The pathway on the right-hand side starts with the 3 objects. Maybe a student has 1 object that they know they'd like to do, but then they need to choose the other 2. So, in combination, but this might help students to understand a possible approach, a possible step-by-step approach to doing the exhibition. I don't know whether I need to read through this. So this aligns to the resources that I have produced to help students create a great presentation. I didn't quite have room to spell them out in full, but I'll show you that in the slide that's coming up. So we can start with looking through the IA prompts, linking them to our TOK units to narrow down choice. I've created this resource called the Exhibition Prompt Decoder, which looks at all 35 IA prompts. Tries to explain what each one means, links it to one of my units, a big question unit, also connects it to some of the 12 key concepts, one or 2 of the key concepts that could be used to explain that particular IA prompt. So, we start with understanding the IA prompts and choosing one. I think they can then think about key concepts and thinkers that might help you to explore that prompt. Okay, so again, thinking of the 12 key concepts, maybe one or two of those will help us to create our commentary on that prompt. Maybe think about one or two thinkers as well who might relate to that theme tackled within that prompt. And again, I've got, actually I haven't put it here, but the Knowledge Heroes resource that I've produced will help them do that. And also the 12 key concept resource will help them do that. I'll show you that in a second. Then they can decide on the theme that they would like to do. Now, again, as I said, this could be one theme. This could be one object might belong to a different theme. It might not be a theme. Now, I think you've got to be careful there. You know, the IB have suggested, they strongly recommend that you do relate it to a theme. Why are they doing that? Why aren't they saying you have to? Well, the answer is, you know, this idea of choice. They think the themes are a useful way to structure the commentary. They think it's a useful way of structuring it. If you don't link it to a theme, then it could go in all sorts of directions. But the fact that you're able to link it to the core theme, which, let's face it, is pretty broad, means that, you know, we're choosing choice here above an overly narrow focus. So you've got the ability on the website. If you go to the exploration points, there's loads and loads of content there for students to use to do a little bit of extra research, just a little bit, you know, an hour or two of extra research to build up some more ideas, to maybe look at how this works in the real world via some real life situations, via some thinkers. So you've built up enough content to be able to draw on to create your commentary. Then they can move on to think about, okay, which objects would work for this. And, you know, this is how they should be answering the prompt. The prompt is not about answer. I use the word answering it. That's what it isn't. Okay, you don't have to answer the prompt. You are not coming to a conclusion about the prompt. You are saying this object is interesting in exploring this prompt because it's much more discursive than a kind of closed-ended answer. It's not that at all. You don't need to come to a conclusion. You are just trying to show the links between TOK and the real world, how TOK manifests itself in the real world. And a good way of doing that is to say, you know, this object is very interesting in helping us to explore this prompt because ... And then within that, you can refer to the theme if you want, but you don't have to, and you won't get marked on that. Okay, it just gives us a useful framework. Okay, so you might start in a different direction. This may be more natural, actually, the one on the right. We might have our objects already. You know, I don't want to go into loads and loads of detail about what these objects should be, but it's probably worth saying that, you know, they should be pre-existing objects. They shouldn't be made by the students. Well, they can't be made by the students for the exhibition. You know, they could already be things that they've done in other subjects. They could be, you know, extended essay. They could be a piece of music that they've composed, something that they've written. You know, they could be something that obviously they didn't create themselves, something from the outside world, a tweet that someone else put out there, whatever. Okay, so they got these three objects that they really want to look at. I think the first step, if you've already got your objects, would be to think about the context, and, you know, this will probably be the themes that we've been talking about. Again, it doesn't have to be. They won't get marked for it, but, you know, it's helpful in order to explore it. It's helpful in order to say this object is interesting because it helps them frame their answer, in other words. Then they would look through the IA prompts. Okay, so we've got these three objects. We think that we'd like to discuss them in relation to technology, or in relation to language, or maybe a couple of those. Now let's look through the IA prompts. Let's try and link them to what we already know, the units that we have covered during our TOK course. What have I found interesting? Have I found sort of perspectives interesting? Have I found thinking about ethical aspects of knowledge interesting? You know, what shall I link it to? So that IA prompt will work for me. Again, you can have a look at the exhibition prompt decoder for that bit. Number 4, a little bit of extra research. Again, this can come through the exploration points, which is available to members on the site. Let's then think about some key concepts and thinkers that might be drawn on that we can mention in our commentary. So that can come from the Knowledge Heroes resource. You can also use the 12 key concept resource, which I'll try and show you. Let me just have a quick look at the time. Okay, it's 11:44, so we are drawing close to the end. Again, just a reminder, think in terms of this object is interesting in exploring the prompt because, and remember again that you don't need to offer a conclusion to the prompt. You're not really answering it, you're exploring it. It's an interesting discussion. So those are two pathways. So that hopefully I've taken you from some kind of big, confused, abstract ideas about the themes in the exhibition and TOK and learning to a way in which we should view and approach the exhibition to an actual sort of clear pathway that we travel through or travel along in order to create the exhibition. Like I've said, it could well be a sort of combination of these two things. They could have one of their objects already. They could be looking for the other two. So, they'll obviously be playing around. But, these things here, these resources that I've linked to, and I'll also link it to the 12 key concept resource, I hope are very, very helpful in helping them in allowing them to create their exhibition. All right, so let me just run through this support that I've just mentioned. So first of all, we're adding a lot of these animated explainers that people seem to like. I think they're really funky, created by a really cool illustrator called Tom McLean, who lives just down the road. I mean, that's a coincidence, right? I spotted him on LinkedIn, and it turns out he lives about 20 minutes away from me. So that was pretty cool. So he's illustrating these. I'm writing and narrating them. There are two out at this moment. You've got one on the course in general. You've got one on the TOK essay, and the next one coming out, which will be today or tomorrow, is about the TOK exhibition. And not only do you get a little 3-minute video, you can also download a banner which you can put on your wall if you're so inclined. Hopefully they'll be quite useful for students to look at and refer to. So these two links here will take you through to the explainer videos. You can subscribe to the YouTube video if you would like to keep up to date with new videos as I add them. And I also obviously add all of the free webinar recordings to the YouTube channel. So that's what we're doing at the moment. In terms of support on the website, right, so there's a lot, okay, there's a lot for the exhibition. Let's just sort of go through it. So my 6 big questions align really well with the IA prompts, okay? We can link all 35 to these 6 big questions, actually to the first 5, because those are the ones that we get through before we do the exhibition. Within the 72 lessons that make up those 6 units, you'll find 6 specifically designed lessons for the exhibition. And students do 2 mini exhibitions. So I think it's a great idea to let them do a little a mini exhibition with one object to start them off. And actually you can get them to choose those on your own. Within these big question lessons for members, I actually give a list of objects that they can choose from. Okay, so they really have lots and lots of structure and help with their first ever exhibition. Then the second practice one is 2 objects, and then they're really ready to do the final exhibition, which is 3 objects. What I haven't said this yet, but what I think is beautiful about the exhibition is that it supports our learning. I think that's another thing I hate about exams. It gets in the way of learning because you have to start revising and doing very boring things in order to prepare for an exam. The exhibition allows us to structure our learning. We can refer to objects whenever we want in TOK classes. So I think I'm more and more into the exhibition. The one thing I'm slightly disappointed by is the fact that it's individual, but I understand the reasoning for that. Because I think it's probably an easier way of doing it. Right, so then fairly recently I produced a TOK exhibition decoder, which looks at all 35 IA prompts. and links them to the BQ units, links them to the 12 key concepts, and tries to help students to really understand them, so they feel confident about choosing one, because of course that's what they have to do before they can actually choose their prompt. The exploration points are everywhere on the website. Okay, so if you look in the free content of the site for history, for language, for all of the aspects of the course, you will see a little blue section of the page which says exploration points. If you are a member, you will be able to click on that, and it will take you to a document talking a lot about, you know, that aspect of the course, giving access to loads and loads of articles, videos, thinkers, etc. And I update that every single month when the newsletter comes out. If there are any stories that relate to that particular aspect of the course, I add it to the exploration points. So use those to research in a little more detail for the essay or for the exhibition. The 12 key concepts, I mean, I do find the 12 key concepts really, really useful. If you're not sure what they are, just, you know, check in the TOK guide. They are words such as truth, culture, perspectives, values, etc., that are really useful words and concepts and terms for students to use. Again, there's no obligation in the exhibition or indeed the essay to use these concepts, but they're just really useful. It's kind of like a lexicon of terms that we can use to structure our thoughts in an effective way in TOK. So my 12 key concepts resource links each of the 12 key concepts to thinkers, to ideas. It tries to interlink the concepts because they're very easily interlinkable, if that's such a word. And again, lots and lots of media sources that can be used to understand each one. Knowledge Heroes, which I released a few weeks ago, is a list of about 100 key thinkers, slightly more than 100, I think, who students could use either just to understand an idea or a prompt, or to actually, you know, they can build them into their exhibition, or certainly perhaps even more useful for the essay, but definitely could be used for the exhibition. And there's loads of other resources. You know, I've got loads and loads of TED Talks that I use for TOK. There are loads of 10-minute TOK lessons, which I've tried to design for non-TOK teachers, but of course can be used by TOK teachers and can be used by students as well. The Knowledge Lexicon is a huge resource with loads and loads of terms that could conceivably be used. So there's loads of stuff. There's far more than you'll need, far more than you'll be able to use. But hopefully it will be useful. If you're not a member, you can join here. If you are a member, thank you. And if you have any questions about membership or any of these resources, just get in touch with me via that email or via the contact forms on the site. Okay, we do have a little bit of time left, 10 minutes or so. I know I've gotten a lot of questions. I hope they're nice questions, not sort of, Michael, what are you talking about? I don't understand anything that you're saying. So I'm going to just stop screen sharing and let's just see these questions. Wow. Okay. So we've got a lot of questions. Right. Someone agrees with me. It's an amazing course. Well, that's a good start. If we don't, I don't know where to start here. Right, okay. If we don't link them to the core or optional themes, then wouldn't the commentary go random? Yes, it might. Okay, definitely. That's why the IB recommend. All I'm saying is you don't have to, and you won't be marked for that. You won't be marked for the links to the themes. And to me, what I hope is I've made clear here is that doesn't mean don't use the themes, don't use the core theme, don't link it to that. I don't think that's to be recommended. What I'm saying is I think this informs the way we cover the themes. You know, you don't have to give students a thorough knowledge of 2 themes that they can then draw on for their exhibition, because you're not going to be marked for that. Okay, so there's simply no point in going into weeks and weeks of detail about 2 themes. Keep it broader, keep it more interesting, give them the option to choose a theme rather than imposing a theme on them. But I do recommend that you get them to use the context of a theme for their exhibition, because I think you're right, it could become too random. Do they have to write an introduction explaining the question and their perspective? As I understand it, they don't have to write an introduction, because if you do that, if you think in terms of 3 separate paragraphs of 300 and a bit words, there's no room to do that. Think along the lines that I've said. This is interesting because, okay, and then it'll explain the links between that perhaps and the theme, but more importantly, the way in which this object helps us to explore this IA prompt. Not necessarily in context of the exhibition and themes does one need to teach the structure of ethical theories or epistemology and elements of philosophy in general. Definitely not. You don't need to do that, but I think it's interesting. I mean, that's the way I design my course. I hope that doesn't sound too flippant. What is interesting to me, I hope, is what is interesting to them. Certainly, when I'm dealing with an interesting concept, for me, I make a fantastic lesson. So personally, I find things like Kant and Mill's ideas really interesting philosophically, and I think they're really helpful for the students because it helps them to make sense of moral ideas. So yeah, you definitely include a few because that's interesting. Would you allow students to use quotes from someone famous? Well, I like quotes to sort of begin a discussion, to begin an exploration. Definitely no reason why they can't include a quote within their commentary, as long as it's not too long, and as long as it's not overshadowing what they themselves are writing and their opinions. If it supports or helps them to explore the ideas that they're presenting, then yeah, of course, I think quotes are good. Are you explicitly stating that students should be free to use any of the themes in combination for setting an exhibition to the IA prompt? This differs from the IA documentation that seems to say use one theme to work on. For the record, I agree with using themes together. Okay, yes, I am explicitly saying that because that's what the IB said in that presentation last week. Okay, so it's very important that you don't just think that I'm making all this up. I watched that great webinar last week, and I was so happy to see it because it kind of confirmed everything that I hoped the exhibition was. And one of the things she said was, you can have 2 objects linking to one theme and 1 object linking to the other theme. Remember, you are not being marked on that link. You're not getting marked on, linking it to the theme. You don't have to do that at all. So yes, you definitely can do that. And I don't think it differs from the IB. They say, we strongly recommend that the context of your commentary, the context of your exhibition is the core or optional theme. And I don't think they say, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't think they say we strongly recommend one. Maybe they do, I don't know. But last week in that webinar, they said they can be different. Okay, so yes, I am explicitly saying that because that's what they say. If we approach touching on all the optional themes in the 5 areas of knowledge, is it practically possible to cover in 1 year especially? Yes, I think it is practically possible, like I say, because if you're doing units which are question-based, conceptual sort of ideas, themes, rather than history, then the natural sciences, you can cover more than one at the same time. Okay, so to try and give that an example, right, my big question number 5 asks the question, how and why does knowledge develop over time? Okay, to look at that question, I look at language, I look at the arts, and I look at natural sciences, and I sort of blend all of those together. And that's how you do it. So that's my unit of 6 weeks. That's about how long each of my 6 units take, about 6 weeks. And within those 6 weeks, we're doing 3 different aspects of the TOK course, and we're interlinking them as we go along. I don't do this in much detail, but with the development of scientific ideas, of course, you're doing the development of technology. With the development of artistic ideas, I even touch on indigenous knowledge, indigenous societies a little bit, and on religion as well. So, if you base your units on a big question, it allows you so much more flexibility and allows you to deliver the course in a much more interesting, integrated way, which is what knowledge is, I think. Can you please elaborate on the thinkers? If you have a look at the website, you'll see knowledge heroes. That's the that's the resource that I've created. But there's also a lot of free content, a lot of free thinkers, page that is for any user of the site, not just a member, with lots and lots of thinkers on. I'm going to update that quite soon because I think it needs to be a little more diverse and interesting. But I think Knowledge Heroes hits the spot in that respect. Someone is saying, how much of the commentary should focus on the context of the object? Is the real life scenario of the object its context, or is the theme that makes up the context? It is the context from where the TOK concepts emerge. Well, I think the object itself, first of all, this is another really good piece of advice. The more specific your object, the better. Again, this is something that was talked about last week. Okay, so for example, you might think, right, one of my objects is going to be a phone. Okay, now to narrow that down, let's turn it into a smartphone. Let's go a bit further, an iPhone. Let's go a little bit further, it's my iPhone. Let's go a little bit further, it's my iPhone 10 that I purchased from Fifth Avenue 2 years ago, and which now no longer sort of downloads these certain apps, which are crucial to the way in which I understand the world. So, you know, the more specific you can make it, the better, because it'll be easier for you to discuss it. And obviously that will give it a much more clearly focused context and probably lead you in the direction of what theme, you know, this will be touching on. So make it as specific as possible. It should not be certainly shouldn't be hypothetical. It shouldn't be a sort of generalized, you know, a church, you know, it has to be as specific as possible. And I think the more specific you make it, the easier it will be to set into a context, and that will give you your theme. Will students need any oral involvement in the exhibition? No, it's completely up to you to turn it into something that is a public sort of performance. So no, it doesn't have to be. What are your thoughts on completing the commentary in DP1, then doing the actual exhibition to start DP2 as an introduction to TOK for the DP1s? I think it's a great idea. Yeah, that's kind of how I began doing it with the presentation. I got them to do their presentations, in other words, to create their presentations, and then they delivered them in DP2. As long as they're not too stressed, I think in DP2, that's the very good reason why the IB have suggested you do it in DP1 to reduce their stress, because they're stressed out to the max in DP2, and they feel much better about it if they've already done it. And you know, you can turn it into a great event, I hope, as long as they feel it's not wasting their time. You know, this is something they can enjoy. This is something that might look good on their CV. Might be something that they can use for their university application. You know, you can sell it to them like that. It's not something that they need to put much effort into. I have always assumed that the students cannot access the site individually. I was talking about the website themselves, since the membership is for our team of TOK teachers. Is that the case? It's completely up to you. You can share your login details with them. I have in the past, this was a big mistake, I have in the past added students to the site, and I had about 1,000 students at one point on the site. I couldn't keep track of that. I couldn't sort of help, you know, the school then said, could you tell me which of my students have been accessing the site? No, I definitely can't do that. It's much better as a school if you just have one access, one username. You can share that with whoever you want, teachers, parents, students if you want. Personally, you know, obviously I use the site to teach. I find there's too much stuff on there for them and they kind of get lost, so I just download the bits that I need and I put it on my Google Classroom. So I recommend doing that, but it's up to you. Is the real world linkage more important than the theme focus? Definitely. That's what you are doing. Okay, that's the overall assessment aim, to show that TOK concepts, or how TOK concepts manifest themselves in the real world. You're not marked on links to the theme. You are marked on doing that. Well, that's a big question. What constitutes evidence as used in the assessment instrument? I might talk about that. I think I might think about that and write that in the debrief. My students are finding specific images they want to use on Google, and I'm getting them to provide a citation reference. E.g., a student provided a painting referenced to a gallery of Ada Lovelace. Yeah, it sounds like a good approach. Yeah, that's a good idea. How would a screen cap of an item from the web without a personal linkage differ from an actual object with a personal linkage in terms of being assessed? I'm not quite sure what that means. I think that what you should be able to do, objects should have a specific time and place, right? Even if they're digital. I'm not sure if that answers your question. If it doesn't, get back to me. Can a student use a Twitter account as an object? The guide says it's okay to use a tweet. Again, I've said, the more specific it is, the better. I think a Twitter account is not, I think you could, but I don't think it's specific enough. Using a tweet is so much easier. And a Twitter account could be dealing with loads and loads of different themes and contexts and goodness knows what. If you have a tweet, then you'll be able to link it much more easily to a theme, be it the core or one of the optional themes. So I would go with the tweet rather than an account. We are using the 6 big question approach. It's great. Good. This has really helped us to get up and running. I noticed that you do the exhibition in second year. No, I've heard recommended do it in year 1. Got any views on this? Right. So if you are using the BQ approach, the idea is you do the first 5 questions in year 1 and then the exhibition. And then the 6th big question is almost like the icing on the cake, which allows them to do the TOK essay. So that's how I recommend it. But I don't want to be overly prescriptive about how you use any of the resources. You can do the big questions in any order you want. It's totally up to you. So that was my thinking. But you do what you want. Change the lessons, substitute. I don't know. It's totally up to you. Will quoting the knowledge heroes count as getting in thinkers in the commentaries? Well, yeah, there are quotes there that you can draw on. Certainly, which could help in the discussion in the commentary. I think what I want to query is if the personal link is more important than just the analysis of a screen cap of an item linked. The personal link, I think, is important. I wouldn't mind that emailed again, and I'll try and respond to that. Okay, so I've got some more questions on the chat, which I might just go through. I'm getting hungry there, so it's time for me to leave shortly. Someone's saying rant away. Well, that's quite nice. Would you be kind as to link the IB webinar from last week? I don't think I'm allowed to do that kind of thing. I was unable to find it. I think it's quite, I think, I don't know what's the best way of doing that. If you go, if you use Facebook, you can, it's plastered all over Facebook. In the TOK teachers groups, you'll find it there. It's not me that does it. So if I'm sure your IB, your DP coordinator can help you. I think that the IB rather misrepresents Indigenous societies. Still others, I think it needs to be. I think they could do it. I think they could do it better, actually. Indigenous societies. I love the opportunity to do it. And actually, I wrote a chapter. I wrote a chapter for a publisher on Indigenous knowledge as it was then, and it ended up not being used by the publisher, and they went with something completely different, which wasn't Indigenous knowledge. So I think people do underrate it. I saw someone on a chat the other day saying, I've been landed with this, I really don't want to do it. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a great opportunity. They should call it cultures, Indigenous cultures rather than societies. Yeah, maybe. I'm so glad to hear you drilling the idea that the exhibition does not have to tie to the themes. The guide makes it sound like they should, but the criteria makes no mention of it. Yeah, this is a question I've been wondering about, and you have confirmed what I thought. Thanks. Good. I hope that does help. I just remember why it's there, why the IB say that, and I understand why they say it, because it gives a little more focus for students. It's there to help them rather than hinder them. But yes, you don't get marked on it, and that's really important. Top concepts really helpful developing some analysis. I agree. Use them. Again, you won't be marked on it, but they're just very, very helpful. Hello, sir. Do you give certificate of acknowledgement for joining this session? I could probably do that. Okay, some positive comments there. Can students, oh, this is a good question. Can students also use the areas of knowledge as part of their exhibition besides the themes in the core? Of course they can. But you know, because like we've said, you do not get marked for your links to the themes. You won't get marked for your links to areas of knowledge. Mentioning them, why not? Of course you can do that. You know, talking about a key historical thinker like E.H. Carr, for example, a scientific thinker like deGrasse Tyson. I don't know. Of course, it's not going to be harmful, but I wouldn't, of course, go into lots of detail. You know, the areas of knowledge are for the essay, and you will be marked on that. So that's how it differs. Excelente presentación, gracias. ¿Podría al final compartir el PowerPoint a nuestros mails? Yeah, of course you can. Please share away. Does the IB need evidence of the students' exhibition to know how and why they've been marked? Good question. Yes, I think, you know, you'll be moderated, right? So you're going to be uploading the exhibition file, so they will see them, I assume. I think that's how it works. Or do they trust the school? No, I don't think so. It's not going to work like the presentation. Exhibit could be for CAS, right? That's a good idea. Killing two birds with one stone. That's good. One of my students wanted to use a classmate as an object. What are your thoughts on this? Again, it's not very specific, is it? I mean, something like that potentially could work. It could be, I suppose, an idea that classmate has put. I mean, I don't know how they are doing that. An aspect of that classmate, an aspect of their language. I don't, you know, definitely it would have to be narrowed down, but something like that, you know, it's that person is in the real world, so you know, could presumably do that. Yeah, but just make it specific. Right, I have no more questions. That means I can go and have lunch, which is good. Thank you very much for joining me. The next presentation, the next webinar will be on the use of real life situations, which I don't really think we call real life situations anymore. Real world issues, whatever. I don't think we need to be that formulaic. This is obviously very important in the TOK essay, but it's also very important in the exhibition. I think they're handled slightly differently in both of those. But I think most importantly, you know, our real life situations are the things that drive our course and make it relevant and make it important for our students. So I'll be looking at what will work in lessons and how you could draw on them to help them understand the course and do well in the assessments. And that's the next webinar. Thank you very much for joining me. It's been quite a long webinar. I will get this processed now and uploaded to the YouTube channel, and I will send you the debrief. Thank you very much for joining me and all of your really positive comments, and no one said anything rude, which is great.